Yo guys, let's just pretend that this mic is not like fully in frame and in my face, but at least the audio is good. I hope. Anyways, if you can solve the Rubik's Cube, you know that fast cubers rely on muscle memory, where you would see a pattern and do the moves without really thinking about them. But here's the catch though, muscle memory can also slow you down if you create bad habits. So in this video, I will show you 8 bad F2L habits that you probably need to fix before it's too late. How many of these are slowing you down? Let me know in the comments. Let's start with number 1. Doing unnecessary filler moves. Something I see a lot of people do is inserting a pair, and when they cannot immediately find the next pair, they will start doing filler moves, or even worse, starting rotating the cube without any reason to. If this becomes a habit, you'll never develop your look ahead to actually look for any pieces in spots you wouldn't immediately expect them to be. And something that you might do as well is just taking out random pieces when you do not know immediately what to do. Now this is bad because this way you will never develop the intuitive knowledge to actually deal with cases that aren't that straightforward. For example, when we have this corner right here in the back, so instead of just taking out this corner and dealing with this other F2L pair, if I just have the edge right here and take out the corner, this sets up an easy insert to be inserted to the left. Now this is knowledge that you need to develop, and for that I have an entire F2L playlist where I try to not make any of the bad habits we have in this video, so it might be worth taking a look at after this video. Number 2. Solving without understanding what you're doing. A lot of people hear intuitive F2L and they think of beginner F2L. But actually it's not about what you're learning, it is about how you learn it. And with that I mean you shouldn't memorize solutions blindly. If you just look at this case and think of this algorithm and do it without really looking, then yes, eventually you will learn it. But the thing is, you're not building an intuitive understanding of what's happening. For example, when we're solving this case, I know if I put the corner right here, I can hide it and push the edge across from it, which forms this split pair. And there's a couple of benefits in understanding your F2L solutions. First of all, you will not look like an idiot when you try to explain what you're doing. You'll not be like, yeah, just do this algorithm and it solves itself, because then people are like,
wait, are you just memorizing your solutions? That's pretty dumb.
Another advantage is that we can apply the knowledge we built for our pairs to different cases. For example, if we know this case right here where we push the edge next to the corner, we also know this case right here because we can just intuitively see that, yes, once again, we can hide the corner and just put the edge next to the corner, which builds a pair. Patterns like these are very common, and usually when you just learn a few F2L cases, your knowledge will naturally extend to the rest of the cases and learning them will become way easier. Number 3, ignoring edge orientation. When I started F2L, I thought edge orientation was something advanced that only the pro cubers use. But understanding EO early on totally changes the way you will look at F2L pairs. Each F2L edge is either good or bad. When the top color matches the front center, this is a good edge, but when it doesn't match the front center, orange-blue, it is a bad edge. Good edges you can solve using just R, U, and L moves without rotating, but when you have a bad edge, you cannot do this with R, U, L moves. In fact, you either have to rotate or you have to throw in some F moves. Making it a habit to spot EO of pairs helps you for 2 reasons. The first reason is pretty straightforward, but now you can actually have a rule for when it is good to rotate and when it isn't. So for example, when I look at this edge right here, notice that it is a bad edge because the top color blue doesn't match orange. So I know I have to rotate to solve it with an RUL solution, which by the way, on average is the best way to solve pairs if you want to keep the flow in your solutions, but I will talk a bit more about that in a later point. And the second reason is that when you're deciding between 2 pairs, it's usually better to solve the pair with a good edge orientation. For example, right here we have this corner, this edge, and we have this edge and this corner, so 2 different pairs. Now this one stands out a bit more. However, notice that this is a bad edge right here, but this is a good edge. So in fact, it is actually better to first solve this pair right here, because if I rotate first to solve this pair, I know I will have to rotate back to solve this edge right here. So a solution for this could be to take out the corner like this, which forms a pair, and then you can solve this right away, and then we can work on this pair right here by, for example, rotating. At first, recognizing the edge orientation of pairs will take some effort, but over time this will become completely natural, and that's why it's important to build this habit early on. Number 4. Over-relying on your right hand. One big reason Yihang Wang is the best cuber in the world right now is because he's completely ambidextrous during his F2L. And with the right habits, no pun intended, you can do this too without any effort. Most tutorials out there focus a lot on solving pairs in the front right slot. And while it is okay as a starting point, it is very important to understand that you can mirror every F2L case out there to the left side. So whenever you learn a righty solution, it is very crucial you also learn the lefty solution. For example, for this pair right here, a common solution is putting the corner in the back and doing a sledgehammer, which forms a pair right there. But it's very crucial that if you know the solution from the right side, you do the same on the left side, meaning that putting the corner in the back, doing a lefty sledge, and then just inserting the pair. It is so simple, but if you do not build the habit of doing this, your left hand will just fall behind, and that's so sad. Look at it. Look at the little guy. If you're struggling to use your left hand, something that helps a ton is actually scrambling the cube using only L and U moves. So just doing a bunch of random L and U turns, and then you might have to like solve the last cross piece again, and then from this position right here, just try to solve your F2L on the left side without rotating, and you'll notice that you'll be forced to use lefty solutions, and if you do this a bunch, you will just naturally become faster at it. Number 5. Learning bad finger tricks. When you learn an F2L solution, you're not only learning the moves, you're also learning how you perform them with your fingers. Literal muscle memory, if you will. The problem is that when you learn a solution, you might build the bad habit of doing inefficient finger tricks like starting with a regrip to set up a pair. And this is not good, dude. You will ingrain these bad finger tricks in your brain every time you do the solution, making it even more difficult to fix it in the future. So, simple solution, just learn good finger tricks from the get-go. But what are good finger tricks? Well, my friend, go to the Cuphead channel, watch my intuitive F2L playlist. I try my best to come up with optimal executions for every solution I show. And the main point that I make is that for almost every F2L solution out there, you can start and end in home grip, which makes it way better to just keep the flow in your solutions. Number 6, rotating during solutions. When we're dealing with a bad edge, for example, this green-orange pair we're solving right here to the front left, the edge is bad from this orientation, there's generally speaking 2 things you can do. The first one is to first set up an easy insert and then rotate to insert it. The second thing you can do is rotating first and then solving the pair without a rotation. Most of the time you want to rotate before a solution instead of during the solution. And there's 2 reasons for this. The first one is, on average, it is just faster because you can do a solution that doesn't get interrupted by a rotation, or it just simply flows better. The second reason is that it is better for look ahead. When you solve a pair from one specific angle, it is easier to track the pieces around the cube because you're only looking at it from one perspective. Of course, there will be exceptions where rotating in the middle of a pair is totally fine. You'll even see pro cubers do that. Usually it is because it makes the flow better. You can cancel into some moves from the previous solution. Or for example, when we have an edge stuck in the middle layer, I find it easiest to just set up a 3-mover and then rotating in the middle at certain occasions. But in general, it's a good idea to follow this rule and it will make your solves a bit more consistent. Number 7. Learning too many F2L tricks too early. At some point, everyone goes through a phase where they're hunting for F2L tricks. Some clever solutions with wide moves or F moves to avoid rotating. But here's the thing though, guys. Most of them don't actually make you faster. Even Yihang Wang solves most of his F2L with simple, intuitive, mostly 2-gen solutions. His speed comes from mastering the fundamentals, not complex F2L solutions. And the main problem with F2L tricks is that it makes your look ahead way more difficult. For example, a lot of people know the F2L trick for this case right here. So this is a bad edge. Normally you would rotate first, but alternatively with the corner right here, you can do this solution right here, which solves a pair. Now, I did this to a solved cube to just show you how many pieces actually get influenced. First of all, this edge flips, this edge flips, this edge flips, and this edge flips as well, meaning that it will be very difficult to keep track of your pieces when you do this during F2L solutions. Alternatively, if you do a normal 2-gen solution by rotating first and doing something like this, none of the edges get flipped and it just makes look ahead way easier. That being said, F2L tricks definitely have their place. For example, for the last pair where look ahead is not that important anymore, doing a trick can be totally viable, but usually beginners start learning a bunch of F2L tricks without really knowing why they learn them in the first place. Number 8. only focusing on the cross during inspection. When you start cubing, you'll learn that inspection time is there to inspect your cross solution. But at a certain point, this just becomes a bit too easy, and instead of trying to push yourself to look for more, you become lazy. You just take 2 seconds to inspect your cross and you do that every single time, and this is not good, guys. One of the most important shifts we've seen in cubing is how the cross and the F2L start blending together, where people like Yihang or all of these other Chinese cubers start to predict almost the full F2L just during inspection. But you just don't get there by being lazy. Instead, you have to push yourself every single scramble to try to predict as much as you can. Now, when you're just starting out, maybe inspecting a full cross can be difficult, and if that is the case, just focus on that first, bro. I'm not trying to like wreck your brain here. But when you notice that you're becoming lazy or you're not using the full 15 seconds, try to look for something extra. Like, you don't have to start predicting the full first pair, but you can start by maybe predicting where one piece will end up. And then for easier scrambles, you can try to predict both pieces. But a huge tip is to look for the edge orientation of a pair when you can, because this way you will notice that maybe if you can only spot the edge of a pair after your cross solution, you'll at least know whether you have to rotate or not for this pair. And this is a really important habit, because not only will you teach yourself to push yourself more during this inspection, but you'll also start to build this intuitive sense how pieces move around early on. And eventually your first pair will feel like it's just a part of your cross solution, and that is exactly what we want to achieve. So now I'm very happy. And another thing that would make me happy is going to thecubicle.com and using the best discount code on earth, which is CubeHead. It supports the channel and it gives you a huge discount.